So thank you very much for joining us today. So we appreciate the effort to connect across different time zones, and we hope this session will provide you valuable insights into the work that already has been done to enhance the safety of our sport. I now hand over to my colleagues, starting with Matthew Knight, who is temporarily coordinating the SafeR project. Thank you. Matthew, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Peter. So over the next 15 slides or so, I'll show some details of the projects we've been working on, explain the structure of SafeR, the database, the achievements that SafeR has made and are enforced for this season. So I'll jump right into the first topic. This slide visualizes the structure of SafeR. So on the left, you see that SafeR is made up of IOC, AIGCP, the CPA, CPA Women, and the UCI are the four equal partners of SafeR. SafeR itself is composed of three bodies. So you have the SafeR board, which oversees the activities, and then you have the SafeR commission, and then the SafeR case management. So that's how SafeR functions. And then really it is the final step then is SafeR is making proposals, and those are then given to the UCI. So that is a very quick snapshot of how SafeR works. The next slide is much more detailed. This gives the specific actions of each of those bodies of SafeR. So you see the board, it's really the oversight of the budget, the appointments of the analysts, the overall strategy. The composition is listed there. This is published on, there's a SafeR page on the UCI website. So these names are repeated, but you'll see it's a distribution amongst different organizers. The teams and riders have their representation along with the UCI. The frequency of meetings about four times a year. So that is really the overall activities of SafeR. And then moving towards the commission, there you get into the technical elements. So advice on regulations, on commissaire decisions, on equipment, education, deciding which events to attend. So there you see, again, you have organizers and representatives across different organizations, whether it's ASO, RCS, Flanders Classic, Unipublic, and again, the teams are represented as well, riders, and then the UCI has two representatives. So myself, formerly a SafeR Commission member, but as Peter mentioned, temporarily overseeing the project. And there, the frequency of meetings is more frequent. It's really monthly meetings to provide guidance and overall vision on the priorities of what SafeR should be actively looking at. So I'll give examples of what took place last year. Monitoring the progress of different projects, different tests that were put in place. And then ultimately, it's those recommendations on regulation changes that go to whether it's the Professional Cycling Council or the UCI Equipment Commission or to commissaires. That is certainly via the SafeR Commission. And then finally, the case management element is the weekly meetings that take place. It's more active, so there's daily communication as needed. So examining race incidents, recommending any proactive measures if needed, and then to use the race incident database as its main tool to collect that information. And as you see, the analysts, so Adam is an analyst for the riders, Alessandra Capoletto, the teams, so Dan Martin and Rubens Bertagliati, and the organizers, Romain Cobin. And UCI is there as observers. So that is really the more active daily element of SafeR. So it's the weekly meetings, really monitoring actively the race incidents, but also proactively anticipating any issues that may arise. So that gives you a very broad overview of who is within SafeR, how active it is, and what it is working on. So what SafeR is working on is really captured in this slide. So in almost a year ago, so around April of last year, SafeR and the SafeR board approved these 27 deliverables organized in these 5 columns. So work on regulations, organizer guidelines, commissaire decision-making, equipment, and education as the 5 pillars of activities and regulation changes of work that SafeR needs to focus on. And this list was collected via feedback through all the stakeholders. So it really is a very broad list of different initiatives. Some have advanced much more quickly, so there are quick wins that have already been achieved. For example, the yellow card system is in force, the minimum number of ambulances were increased, the 3-kilometer rule, as many of you know, is in place, the sprint protocol. So those are really concrete examples. There's many medium to long-term projects on the list. Organizer guidelines, for example, working on improving the current guidelines, whether it's barrier design, the types of course protection being used. Commissaire decision-making is one, so certainly feedback to improve consistency, to work on that. So SafeR and SafeR case management really has the opportunity to review race incidents, whether it's rider behavior or what is installed by a race organizer, to provide certainly constructive feedback, ways to improve, whether it's course design, course protection, and also establishing which decisions commissaires should make in terms of rider safety or rider behavior, for example, lead-out riders in sprints. So there are some really specific cases that SafeR has touched on. Equipment is a big pillar as well. So there's a UCI Equipment Commission. These are concepts that have been brought forward via the families. The concept of reducing speed, increasing stability is certainly one of them. There are different ways to achieve that. The list, as you see there. And also personal protection of the riders, whether it's abrasion-resistant clothing or helmets. These are all elements that will be continued to be looked into by SafeR and recommendations going forward. And then education, again, it's a big pillar on its own. So with the database, developing resources to provide examples. The next few are improving behavior of those in the race convoy. So certainly it's not just riders, but drivers, spectators. The concept of a super license for young riders or some level of education to put in place for riders as we see the age of young riders joining immediately World Tour races is certainly a topic that SafeR can continue to work on. And safety briefings, overall safety briefings. So these 27, it's a very big list. As mentioned, some are quick wins, some are longer term projects. But this gives the guidance for what SafeR should continue to work on. So that explains the deliverables. Then the next 3 slides will just highlight the race incident database. So the UCI press release started sharing some of these numbers, which we haven't shared in as much detail previously. But as Peter mentioned in the introduction, this UCI race incident database is a collaboration with University of Ghent. The base of the project was using their technology to automatically create race incidents based on internet activity, such as scraping the internet and using Twitter at the time of major incidents. You'd have a frequency of comments made and be able to already identify those. The project has continued to grow, but last year, 2024, SafeR being put in place and actively using the database, you can see the huge jump in race incidents that have been entered. And this is at the Pro Series and Men's and Women's World Tour level. So you see that we're around 500. So that's really the volume of data that we've collected. Then the next slide, attributing causes. So the biggest piece of the pie is riders' own mistake. Incidents can have multiple causes in some cases. And then as we move down the list, there are trends and issues to look into. So certainly the point of interest or the pressure on the race as the race is moving towards key moments in the race, such as positioning in climbs or cobble sections or intermediate sprints. There, the frequency is high. Wet, slippery roads is quite high as well. And moving down the list, it's descents, it's traffic infrastructure, it's other elements. So we have a volume of data. We're obviously continuously discussing on how to use this data, how to analyze it. Can better ways to look at the data be developed, such as attributing the severity. So one of the pieces of the pie might be small, but when that does happen, the severity is high. The frequency, the multiple causes as mentioned, the race tension, so high-speed descents in the wet leading to a climb. So there you'd have multiple causes in the race where certainly you'd be able to identify where it would be at risk. Translating that into actions on the ground can certainly be protective measures by the race organizer, other ways of securing the course. So this is giving us a strong background, and the volume of input will only increase in terms of the work of the weekly case management meetings. So this slide summarizes what I've already mentioned. So it's the reviewing of the videos, causes and patterns, using this to highlight in the organizer's race reports if there's some safety issues, checking if any incidents are related to equipment, monitoring the yellow card system. So this is, the focus is at the professional level, but the benefit can be for all event classes. And again, imagining further developments in the software. We've added the SafeR action field to start capturing what actions and recommendations SafeR has made, linking the database with our video replay van. So when an incident is logged with our TV commissaire on site, it can automatically generate an incident. And then looking at the possibility to have an automatic email to contact those involved to even improve further the feedback and input that the database receives. So that summarizes the race incident database project. Then I'll switch topics now to the yellow card system, and we have a video that explains the introduction of this.
SafeR is an independent body that unites riders, teams, event organizers, and the UCI with the aim of improving safety in professional road cycling. SafeR recommended the introduction of a new system to further reinforce safety during professional road races: yellow cards. Let's take a quick look at it. At races, any person in the race convoy rider, sport director, other drivers and motorbike riders who commit offenses likely to pose a risk to the safety of the competition could receive a yellow card. The 23 race incidents concerned are listed in the table of the UCI regulations. According to the number of yellow cards received in a given time, the person concerned can be disqualified or even suspended from races. Anyone who receives 2 yellow cards will be disqualified and suspended for 7 days, starting on the day following receipt of the second yellow card. Anyone who receives 3 yellow cards within a 30-day period will be suspended for 14 days. Anyone who receives 6 yellow cards within a 1-year period will be suspended for 30 days. The system aims to make all people in the race convoy more responsible by introducing the monitoring of bad conduct over time and consequently encouraging respectful behavior. Together, we will contribute to improving safety at road races.
So that video gives a good overview of the system. So a bit of a recap. They were tested in 2024 on UCI World Tour and UCI Women's World Tour events. Starting in this season, it's World Tour, Women's World Tour, and Pro Series Men and Women Continental Championships and Road World Championships. So the yellow cards, they're communicated in the race communique, like a fine used to be as well. So it can be a fine plus a yellow card published in the race communique after the stage or after the race. And they'll be published on the UCI website. So I'll show you what that looks like in the next couple of slides. So it's the 23 race incidents that are now related to safety. So during the test phase, there were 21 race incidents where yellow cards applied, and they're all existing. So there was no new sanction created for the yellow cards. It was adding a sanction, a level of sanction to something that already existed, either as a financial fine or a disqualification. So it's 23 now because 2 were added based on the recommendation of SafeR. So two yellow cards have since been added based on the outcome of the test phase, and suspensions are now in force. So during the test phase, they were not. So looking at this, this visualizes the accumulation of yellow cards, and 2 yellow cards in the same race is a disqualification and a 7-day suspension, and then the accumulation over time. So the 3 yellow cards in 30 days is a 14-day suspension, and then 6 over a rolling period of 1 year is a 30-day suspension. And it's important to note it's all actors in the race convoy, so drivers, riders, media, driving vehicles, sports directors, they're all subject to yellow cards. And on the next slide, you'll see the where it can be found on the UCI website. So they're now published. What you're looking at are the yellow cards already given out in the first approximately 12 days of racing. There have been 5 yellow cards from the Australian races. So that information is online. You'll see how it's published. So they're all license holders. 1 for a rider, their mechanic, team staff, and sports director, and then you'll see the period that those yellow cards will be enforced. So there'll be those that would be active for 30 days, and then when that 30 days expires, then they'll just be active for 365 days, and then when that expires, then it will go back to 0. But it is a way of monitoring who has yellow cards and who potentially may be at risk of a suspension. On this slide, it's an interesting one because it shows the frequency of yellow cards. So during the test phase, so 2024, there were 31 yellow cards given in 66 race days, which is just under 50% of race days. An interesting distinction between men and women. So 29 of those were for men and 2 of those were in women's races. And then we get to the situation of the test, which was very beneficial on a Grand Tour. So there are 22 yellow cards in the 21 stages. So the frequency, and because was new at the time and some training and understanding needed, the percentage to anticipate will likely be higher than 50%, but lower than potentially 100% of race days. And what we've seen so far at the beginning of the year, it's around 50%. And then the pie chart, again, really demonstrates that it's for everyone in the race convoy. So half of the yellow cards were for riders, and then you have a breakdown of team staff and media. So it's quite an equal distribution on that side. And then just coming to my final couple of slides. So this is a useful one to show the outcome of the SafeR Commission recommendations that have been accepted and are in force in the UCI regulations. So we have the sprint zone protocol. So it's the extension from what was known as the 3-kilometer rule, which is now can be extended to 4 kilometers or 5 kilometers. If there's a need, whether it's traffic infrastructure or some other element in the race where the organizer would like to extend that. And it also includes the timing extension from 1 second to 3 seconds. So the sprint zone protocol, as tested last year, is now in force. Then the next one is the minimum ambulances in Pro Series and World Tour, Women's World Tour races. You see an increase from 2 to 3. Yellow cards, the 2 that were added were team assistants in the feed zone. So now they can be subject to yellow cards as they require a UCI license to be sanctioned. And then the new one, and based on the work of the SafeR Commission and the Sprinters Working Group, to focus on the behavior of lead-out riders. So that is an entirely new sanction, and it's very specific to the behavior of lead-out riders decelerating in the sprint and causing or obstructing the riders behind. Feed zone regulations, those were new in Australia, and certainly a point of discussion, as it is a change in behavior. The history behind them and the changes that allowed open feeding along all of the course come from the COVID period, but has seen that it created unsafe situations, new regulations really going back to the concept of more organized and more clear areas where teams are allowed to feed. There's obviously an introduction phase and some adaptation for all involved, so some flexibility in putting these in place and finding the right balance is certainly ongoing, but it is in the right direction of improving safety. And then the extreme weather protocol, the concept of making an in-race decision, which was another concept added, and again, something we'll continue to monitor and work on to ensure it's effectively being used. So that's a summary of the work achieved by SafeR. Then another concept worth mentioning is that SafeR is also looking at studying other areas within the race, and this one is a barrier study. So SafeR will fund a second phase of a study that was started a few years ago with an engineering school in Switzerland to update and improve the regulations and requirements around barriers. So dimensions, how they're connected, how the advertising panels need to be connected, the force and impact that they should be able to absorb and protect the riders in a crash, and also the spectators. So new requirements will be developed, and it will be the outcome of this study. And my final slide, so again, a quick summary of the activities of what SafeR will continue to work on. So the communication strategy, that's what you're certainly seeing here today with this press conference, continuing to advance globally on that list of deliverables. Analysts will start attending events. There may be additional measures to test. And again, that concept of quick wins or longer term projects, so the consistency of yellow cards, the importance of sprint finishes, the consistency there, looking at, again, at the best communication methods within the race and the race convoy, continuing the concept of race monitoring, monitoring locations and distance tracking, and as mentioned, the barrier study. So that's a quick summary of all of the work that SafeR will continue to work on. And now I will pass to my colleagues within SafeR to say a few words on behalf of their associations.
Yes, thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Ariel. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you to yourselves, obviously, because it's a great opportunity for us to explain to you what has been done in the background. It's a pleasure to be here with the two main stakeholders as well, with CPA and IOC, that we've been working closely with in order to make improvements for safety. So on behalf of the teams, I'm sure you can imagine safety is a very high priority, if not the highest priority for us that we're looking into. It's a continuous concern for us. The assets of our teams are the riders. One of, if not the most important assets of the teams. So it's really important for us to create the safest working environment for the athletes. You know just as well as I do, because we all work in cycling, how challenging that is. You know, we're racing in an environment that's not safe. We're racing on roads. We've got traffic circles. We've got traffic furniture. we have dogs and cats, and we've got kids on the road. It's a really difficult, challenging environment to make safe. What I can say is SafeR have been doing a fantastic job. I think I've been fortunate enough to be an observer in the case management study each week. And the amount of work and effort that's been put in from everybody is extraordinary. It's really unfortunate that everybody can't get onto those calls on a weekly basis and see what's been done. But I can honestly and sincerely say that a lot of effort has been put in. A lot of step forwards have been made, and a lot of positive decisions have been made. Obviously, there's a long way to go. We've got a long road ahead of us in order to make cycling a really safe sport because of those difficult conditions that we race in. But working together with IOC, with CPA, with UCI, I really think we've made positive steps forward. And the transparency of working together, I think, is something that's been great. You know, each one of us has to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, where can we make improvements? The teams have to make improvements in order to educate their staff, the sports directors, everybody else involved in the team. The riders are doing the same through CPA, and the organisers are doing the same. And I think that's really important, and that's been great to see between all the stakeholders. So thank you once again, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions which we look forward to answering, and it's been great to finally get the message through to everyone of what's been done for the safety of cycling.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to highlight the commitment of all families that are part of professional cycling community. We have been moving forward for almost 2 years in the complicated challenge of improving safety in racing. And although there have been moments of much debate with a very different point of views among the families, no one has abandoned the project, as we have always worked from the mutual respect that we have for each other. So many thanks to Brent Copeland and all the AGCP members. Thanks to Alessandra Capellotto and Adam Hudson as a representative of all the cyclists, women and men. Of course, thanks to the UCI with Peter Abele, the road department, the legal department, but especially to Matthew Knight for having managed this project, even if it's temporarily, and for achieving with his professionalism and respect that we continue to move forward. Finally, as representative of IOC, I would like to thank to all the members of our association for more than 160 organizers from all over the world for their effort and for understanding in adapting their work to the new safety standards. After the thanks, I would like to ask all of you a little patience and understanding. Cycling is undoubtedly the most beautiful sport in the world, but perhaps it's also one of the most complex and complicated, especially when the goal is to organize. We compete on playing fields that are not ours and that belong to all citizens. And therefore, it's not easy to adapt the rules to a huge diversity of roads, terrains, cities, towns, villages, street furnitures, and endless obstacles that we encounter every day. Therefore, when SafeR proposed a new safety rule, we do it after much thought and convinced that it will serve to improve. But until these rules are not tested in competitions, we don't know if they will have to be adapted, modified, or in the worst case, discarded. And that is where we need everyone's understanding. You can only improve by changing, but change requires patience, understanding, and respect. Thanks.
Yeah, everything's been pretty much said. I'd like to thank all the stakeholders, AIGCP, AOC, UCI. Very special thank you to Matthew for leading this project, temporary. You know, the safety is mainly for the riders. So we very appreciate to be on this. And the riders really appreciate the weekly meetings that we do with the case management, where we review every single crash. We go into the details. We break it into each category so we can see where most of the crashes happen and go more specific in those areas to eliminate that. And that's been really important for the riders. It's also been important for riders where we did the sprint survey, where we included the riders, we surveyed them, we listened to them, and then we created a working group, and everyone here was listening to them and understanding their perspective. There was another survey that was just sent a couple of days ago about the equipment, and in this survey was key points taken from the riders that you've already read in the media. So that was very good, and the riders being heard, and so the riders are being very involved in this in the SafeR project, which is very important for them. And yeah, it's a lot of work, and I think the most beautiful thing is we're all here and we're all talking. Sometimes it gets heated, but that's because we're passionate about it. And we can laugh now, but yeah, it's true though, because we're all fighting, for the best of the sport, and we all have different angles and different ideas and different point of views, but we all want the same goal. We want the races to be safe. We want the riders to crash less. And I do believe this program is going in a very good direction. So thank you everyone here, and we look forward to the nice questions coming.